Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Sneha Roop. I'm a palliative physician. I'm the founder of Ori Kalankini. Ori Kalankini is an organization that's changing narratives around menstruation and sexuality in India using art, theater, and dialogue. This series is called Leaning into the Network series, where we're bringing people from different parts of our network to meet each other, to share their perspective, to share their skills, and the specific relief effort they're doing around the COVID 19. On Saturdays, we specifically bring people from YCF network, that is Young Connectors of the Future. It's a program run by Swedish Institute. So today's guest, Damith Chandimal, is a YCF alumni from 2017 batch. He is a human rights activist from Sri Lanka. Hi, Damith.
Hi,
Thank you for coming and giving us your time. How are you today?
doing good as usual, but a little bit finishing with certain reports did last week.
Uh, Damit, we'll start with your bio itself. Like when you said human rights activist, what has your education background been, and at what point you realize that okay, now human rights activism is what I need to do. You know, what time or what issue, if you want to talk a little on that.
I think to talk about it as a career is a different thing. What I feel is something we have that, we become human rights defenders or human rights activists, not because things we have got, no, because of the things we didn't get.
Wow. Yeah.
Because of the not because of the things we things we lost basically. mm, I remember in my childhood, I was a child where my father was not able to stay with me. I was not even able to stay with my family. I had to stay with my grandparents, uh, and my father was under death threats, and he had to leave his home. He was not into human rights. He had a political opinion. He fought for the things he believed in. uh, then what the family has to undergo, uh, and what children has to undergo, was a different story. And I think I cannot. There was a time in my life that I never thought I can forgive people for making my childhood like this. And then at certain point, I think I started questioning my father also. Is this the correct ideology? Was my father correct? But I think the questioning, the point of my being of a human rights activist was about questioning the beliefs, I would say. The questioning the father, whether my father is telling the truth. But father, I think he told the truth. What happened to us, to us, the what happened to us, to him, us and him, as truth to some extent. I think it was his best. So I saw certain things don't go together. So I started beginning questioning, and that questioning went into my school, to university. For example, I questioned my school principal. Wrote an article in the school. We ran something called Wall Magazine, a board where we put articles and all. I wrote an article in this Wall Magazine where principal took it to his quarters and kept it there, and said. Uh, so I stopped going. Instead of taking saying I'm sorry, I have written something wrong, without telling that, I I stayed at home, and said I have written the truth I believe, so there's no reason to apologize. So I will stop at home, but I won't see the apologize for what is uh, what is untruth and what is injustice. So I think I was not telling myself a human rights I think activist until recently. Telling a human rights activist is again I think political thing. Lot of people, because they have lost things, because they believe in justice, because they believe this is good for the society, this is what they can do, they are human rights activists. So I would like to keep it as it is. I mean, rather than uh, what is it to tell as a career human rights activist or something like that. I would like to keep it open for everybody.
Yeah, and whether we call it or not, at what stage we call it, what you do is ultimately what you're moved by. I think that's what you pointed out. That if you have lost
Do you
something, then
want
you
to answer my professional background and all?
you
I
want
will
to, yeah,
take
go
that.
ahead. Talk about talk about the work that you do and
Okay, I studied social work. Before that, I studied journalism. So actually, when I leave the school, I wanted to become a journalist. So I wanted to study journalism. I uh, I was not qualified. I mean, in Sri Lanka, the education is so competitive. So I was not qualified to enter to the university. Then I did a diploma in journalism in a university. I borrowed some money from. I never paid. I think I borrowed some money from my mother and applied this course and got selected and did it. At the end of the course, I wanted to become a journalist. But when I look at the job market, I saw I cannot find a better paid, or at least a job that my expenses are paid in Colombo, that I can stay as a journalist. So I was shocked. I went back home and I wanted to. Then I decided to join a tourist hotel, and there I work as a receptionist, come telephone operator, and also cashier in a small hotel. So there I saw this advertisement of a social work degree which was conducted by Social Services Ministry. Then, so then I applied and got selected. It is because I think I was into social work, but it was not a conscious choice at that point to choose social work. Anyway, that. With that, I came to uh, Colombo to stay and continued my job at the hotel. I worked like mm, uh, 3 days continuously from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. And then all next days I was studying in the campus. That was, I think, I mean, uh, it is difficult, but looking back at it, I think my way of work and how I look into social work also, how my career also has a greater influence from the difficulties I came from. And my brother asked me a question, elder brother asked me a question. You did a journalism diploma and then you didn't become a journalist. Now you are trying to do something called social work. And where would you end up? I didn't have an answer, but I still wanted to go ahead. So I said, my brother, you keep your money. I will manage my expenses. And I didn't know, frankly, an answer what social work is at that point. And I didn't know what I can do after that. So,
wow.
but yeah, from that point I worked. I mean, I was educated, got basic training in social work, and then I think because of my sexuality and the other things I studied and the fellow activists I was into. uh, gender, and then I think broadly human rights, writing, freedom and expression, and a lot of other fields. I did masters in Colombo, University of Colombo, in gender and women's studies.
Oh, wow. So then you did two undergraduate and then one postgraduate.
Yeah.
Um, can you talk about how the situation is for, because in India, if I have to draw a parallel, just 3 weeks ago, I lost a friend, Anjana Harish. She committed suicide because of conversion therapy. Like, her family forced her, and that's still happening. And people are beaten, people are killed, people die because of the hatred. That is the situation, though we have Section 377 scraped. Um, about 2 year, 1.5 year, 2 year back, but still in the social practice, it is it's very difficult, and it's now again as if people have woken up again. The mental health professionals are taking a stand against conversion therapy, but we know that this battle is going to keep going on and on. Um, so how is it in Sri Lanka? What are the challenges you're facing? If you could speak a little bit about it. And for a queer person, yeah.
I think in the we have the, I mean since 377 was taken off, we have kind of perception towards India. India is more progressive in a way, and then when we look into the incidents, when we look into the what's happening around us, so we see the thing that India can be not that progressive, and there are challenges. And when I look into other countries, perhaps Nepal had I think before most of other countries in South Asia and Asia, Nepal had its progressive legal changes. And then even Pakistan had their acceptance to transgenders, and they passed kind of a kind of most progressive law towards transgenders. But our challenge is that these laws we pass or whatever are unable to become practical realities in our societies. Because we can change the laws perhaps, but still we are unable to change the mindsets of the people, and laws should come from the people. And that's the thing. I mean, we if we as perhaps we as queer rights activists, we also have failed. This is not to, I mean, perhaps not to blame the culture and all, and also the I mean, why this kind of culture we have, why we cannot think of justice, or I mean, if people commit suicide, it cannot be a good culture. That kind of, I mean, basic question. If people are stressed, what's the meaning of it? So we, I think, have to question it back. But then again, as perhaps as academics, or as people little bit educated than other people, we might understand things better than others, but still we are also responsible for not taking the message widespread. And our education systems, I mean, being educated is also problematic, I think, because the education systems are the ones perhaps making this damage too much. It's not uneducated people doing this therapy.
Mm-hmm.
These therapies are done by educated people, by the good products of our education systems. So this has to, I think, this is a point that we should question what kind of education we need, what kind of society we need, what is our culture, and we should work together, I think, if we want to stop and all. And especially in COVID-19 situation, I think mental health and other concerns have a much bigger role and importance. And same as the India, I hear in Sri Lanka similar stories. Still, the conversion therapies are done. My friends have undergone conversion therapies, but nobody was successful.
Because it's not an ailment to cure you, you know. So how will
Yeah.
it be successful? Yeah. Yeah, and you rightly pointed out that somewhere it's a point of reflection for even queer rights activists, that is our queer community resilient, you know, are we giving the social support net that we expect the larger community to give? If today Anjana committed suicide, I think we also need to question ourselves, like, I would question myself. I don't know. I don't want to put pressure on other people, but um, how we as a community can become better support system for our folks. You know, before the heteronormative society changes and accepts, but how we can build resilience within and create systems that cushion the stress. The minority stress is real, like, you know, minority trauma is real, and apart from, like you said, because of the marginalization, we face mental health issues. There is also increased incidence of anxiety, depression, drug abuse among the queer community, and also that, you know, separation from family or not acceptance from family, or being in family itself can cause lot of issues. How it was for Anjana, and we are bombarded with troubles from everywhere, and how do we cope with it? And at the same time continue the activism, or continue, even, like, forget calling it activism, just petitioning for better conditions for human beings to live. Such a big challenge to balance both. Hmm. Yeah.
So we are going to a different side than we initially planned, but it's okay, I think.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, about mental health and the other challenges, but would we, shall we focus it to the what we original planned, or go ahead in this
Anyhow,
direction?
because ultimately, like you brought it up, it's right only. In COVID-19, which we think is completely unrelated, the people who are at marginalized, say poor people, say people of certain castes, certain sexual orientation and gender expression, they are being more affected than the others. You know, that
Yeah,
is undeniable.
talking about the marginalization, I think the marginalization of the ethnic minorities and religious minorities was a pattern, I think, throughout entire South Asia, perhaps in other regions also, that discrimination has led to more damage than COVID-19.
Hmm.
That we have refused certain services to people, and our media have not acted in a responsible manner. That often we tend to make a bad image of the minority ethnic group who are irresponsible and is spreading the COVID-19. We often put the blame on a minority, the other.
Yeah.
So, I mean, would that help us to get rid of anything of this? We are in a problem, and that happened in India, that happened in Sri Lanka, and it is happening in even other countries. So that I mean, we the problem doesn't come from COVID-19. The problem is, I think, has a history, and our societies were not that progressive. Our leaders let it to happen even before COVID-19, and COVID-19 is a litmus test moment that we everybody in trouble, and so the strategy is used by our politicians and those who hold power to rule us, to divide and rule us. Now how they are affecting, I mean, the same tactics and tools. We as citizens perhaps have not much agency, or we have not worried to think about it, or we have become the perhaps not to change much. We think that we can do little about what is happening. It's politicians who are responsible. So we, what has happened now is that the long time game they played now has resulted lot of dangers. So they, when it comes to votes, the minority is countless. So minorities, perhaps if minorities get together, it matters a lot. But if minorities can be divided, politicians can still sustain. If the majorities get together, it's easier to win the elections. So that this logic, I think, has damaged a lot. That we are not concerned about the minorities. We are not concerned about the silent people. We are not concerned about the women. We are not concerned about children if the things don't come out. If it comes out, I think if it goes in media, it matters a little. But otherwise, if this is where I think the freedom of expression also matters.
Yeah.
If I mean, the injustice happen, but if there is a way to silence the injustices, if they are not reported in the media, if they are not reported in the social media, uh, things are good.
Yeah.
Not for
And
us. Things are good for the politicians, those who hold the power, and their lives could be uh, well off without. I mean, as far as people don't question them, as far as people bear the injustices happen to them. So this is where I think the discrimination of minorities and also on the marginalization, we should think as we all should be against the marginalization. And minorities also, that we think ethnic minorities, and minorities can be also other ways. I think we at some point, a majority person have a kind of minority idea that perhaps in a majority family, a LGBT child born.
yeah.
So this minority majority, how we divide this also becomes problematic, and that we think this we are majority, we are well off, we don't have problems. And also the other thing is, even the only majority uh, who is still doesn't get counted is the poor. Poor are a majority, but poor has less power,
Right.
and the rich are a minority, but never the poor get together. And I mean, really poor have got together and work against the rich. And uh, I mean,
Yeah.
usually even the poor majority thinks that that ethnic minority person is the enemy. It is the person who takes away the money. Or why we are poor is the reason is somebody wrong with the LGBT community, somebody wrong with the ethnic minority or a religious minority. We never think this rich elite, those who with power, are the responsible persons.
Right. What you were saying brought two, three things for me. Like that COVID is not a problem, COVID is litmus test. It's a lens which is like truth telling lens. You look at it and you see, oh, that is falling apart, this is falling apart, health system is not equipped. Governance itself is like so wobbly. And this is not only in South Asian countries, but you use the word progressive. So now it becomes important to question who is progressive, who is this world leader we are like, we were looking up to, and that system is collapsing. We know the countries whom we are referring to, and we know also the countries who have overcome the situations. Sweden, Norway, Germany, Taiwan. And there are countries who are able to manage, New Zealand, who are able to manage it with good governance, and then there are countries which are just crumbling apart and still trying to hold it together by force. And that's happening in using police brutality, state brutality, in the developed nations as well as here in South Asia. So idea of progressive, idea of corona being a problem, and also about how you were saying that we're fighting amongst each other and somebody else is profiting from this fight. That's why they'll never solve it, because they always have a bait for us to have one group of people always vote for them no matter what. If the voters start asking the right question about education, food, jobs, and then they'll be speechless. And I think that's why they're playing on the game all the more. You did mention that it becomes responsibility of the media to report. So here two questions come. One, that corporate houses owning the media, like you know, uh, people with money are buying TV channels, buying media stations. So the news relayed is one-sided, for on one hand. Second is the censoring. So even the independent media, even the media which is not pleasing to the government, that is being crushed. So do you have to add something on that? Because I know your work mostly surrounds around freedom of expression.
Yeah. So when it comes to media ownership, you are right there. I think a bunch of people who have many money, they have owned the media, and we think what media is telling the truth, and what media is telling is what we should think. I mean, that has happened. That larger part of the ideology is controlled by the media, and again, we should think controlled by the people who have money to buy media, and how the certain news are selected, certain news are not, and especially certain geographical areas could be selected, and certain geographical areas could be totally ignored. Certain problems affect certain groups of people can be selected. uh, for example, it can be a caste, it can be an ethnicity, or it can be some educational level or anything,
Yeah.
and certain people can be totally ignored. And this culture we make, uh, through that we silence lot of people. And I think perhaps when it comes to airtime and all, somebody has to silence somebody. But I mean, we have to question the limited resources we have, and to create a kind of culture that this culture doesn't discriminate against somebody. And media is able to ideally is able to bring expose things, bring
Yeah.
justice to the people.
Yeah.
This is a utter lie. On the other hand, we have failed to do so. And then looking at the perhaps social media is again owned by some capitalist companies. But still, I think somebody in a village, if can find an internet connection, can do a video or some news item once on, and expose things that are usually ignored by the mainstream media.
Yeah.
So this gives, I mean, after the social media arrived, there was a kind of change, a societal change of the way freedom of expression worked. And the politicians and the usual elites were able to control the kind of ideas came through the traditional media, and this social media definitely posed a challenge. And then again, but the bad point is that social media again opened up for a lot of issues in media ethics. when it comes to a journalist in a traditional media, there are ethics,
Even
and
if they're followed or not, at least there are.
followed or not, and they even though even they don't follow, they can articulate it. uh, and but when it comes to social media, yes, after some pressure, the companies were pressurized to introduce some ethics, but how to control this much of large people,
Yeah.
and the politicians also, and those who have power also, the traditional media companies also started coming to social media.
Yeah.
So they then those who have money also can pay money and promote certain things. So it was not as the same as it is not an equal space in social media. We go into this kind of complex world. uh, I mean, about to talk as a space of, I think, expression.
Yeah.
So it is a world that there are inequalities remain. Uh, there are, I mean, not just inequalities, very large inequalities remain. So in this space, I think these are tools.
Yeah.
So
Um,
which those who have power, and like I said earlier, those who want to control the voices of people
yeah.
would like to control it anyway,
True.
either social media or the traditional media, or a poster on a wall. They would definitely try to control.
Yeah. Yeah. You rightly brought out the point. I'm still an optimist. I will still say that internet democratized quite a lot. If not, like I still get the problem what you're saying about promotion, about again the fake news. That itself is one form of control. Um, all the data privacy, like we are shown certain things based on our previous search engines, and that way it is an abuse of media in a way. Here, for example, recently I think Facebook issued a stance that though we are using the platform, the CEO of the same platform said that checking fake news doesn't come under their you know pursuit of things or what they have to do. When they were asked about the violent or threatening remarks made by one certain person in power, and that's what the stance they gave. Like you rightly said, it's capitalistic, and then how much can you pressurize them to take a stance against certain posts, or even if it is the president of a country who's making it, but if it is fake, if it is inducing violence, then does it not become the prerogative of the owner of this media to speak about it? And their stance is clear
I
that they
think
don't want to check fake news. So yeah, these are problems.
to talking about the fake news, I think we have to think about the even traditional media put the fake news.
Hmm.
When they put the fake news, they put the fake news in big letters, and then uh, we ask the correction, and then they put a small note that it was corrected.
Yeah.
They have a very larger reach. A traditional media would reach sometimes 100,000 or millions or perhaps billions of people,
Hmm.
and uh, they have still put the fake news, and rarely or limitedly when compared to social media, they have faced problems in a very limited manner. But when it comes to social media, I think it matters how I put a lie in my Facebook profile. So
Yeah.
it matters that how many what is my reach,
Yeah.
and uh, how innocent is my lie, what damage it can do.
Yeah.
Can it divide the communities? Would Because of that lie I have put, somebody would burn somebody's house. Some is somebody is in danger because of my lie. So these are the things I think we have to think that proportionality, reach, what kind of impact it would happen. So I think, I mean, there are differences between sarcasm and the lie. Uh, Genuine mistakes, there are genuine mistakes. There are sometimes the person's idea is not to put a fake news. The idea can be a, I mean, intention can be a genuine one. So all these things have to be carefully thought of, whether to decide whether it is fake news, or even if it is fake news, whether legal action should be taken. But what has happened is that law is a tool again. It is also used by those who are with power, not in the benefit of the poor and powerless people. So these powerful people look into a way that to find a mistake of somebody and put in trouble. I think when it comes to Bangladesh, this was very clear that how the cyber laws were used against dissenting cartoonists, writers, and others even before the COVID-19, and it became very. I mean, it became much serious in the COVID-19 situation. So the India also the same. You look into the situation before the COVID-19, uh, there was less. I mean, similarly, that there was the intention of the powerful people to track down the social media. The same happened in Sri Lanka, and at least 17 people, I think more than that, 17 people were officially said that they were arrested because of the publishing fake news. But who decide this fake news? Then larger fake news, which was said by the media, which impacts the minorities, and I mean, which can divide the communities, which can create issues like death threats. Life threats were ignored, and they remain in impunity, total impunity, while somebody with a smaller reach and for something very smaller, a mistake, perhaps a very small mistake, which actually do not have a kind of large threat to the society, or a community, they were punished selectively because they are from a minority, they are human rights defenders, or they have spoken against the government previously.
Hmm. Hmm. Rightly so. When you spoke about even if journalism practice ethics or not, ethics were codified and it was articulated. And I can draw the parallel when you say that when mainstream media makes a mistake, there is a policy to go and rectify that mistake. You can write to the editor and get it rectified. Hopefully they'll agree or not. But here in social media, on one hand, it's democratized, and everyone can opinionate and reach a large number of people, but it also can mean formation of IT cells and trolling and rape threats, death threats on the social media itself, and also leading to the bombardment of literally fake news. Like there were, I think I won't say it's not relevant, but it is still in India. We had one episode of one Instagram room called Boys Locker Room leaking, and in that whole social media group had. Um, boys talking about their own classmates about, oh, we'll rape her, we'll gang rape her, and things like that. And when it came out, everyone is shocked. But we know that this is happening. We know that there are, we have very weird groups, because in India it's polarized into right wing and liberalist and left leaning, and then there are groups on each side. When Anjana Harish expired, there were posts about her, about how she, she was a very good Hindu girl, and then she got into communism, and whole, like, really after someone's death also, they really did disservice, and did great disrespect. And I'm bringing this in because we are talking about fake news, and there are IT channels, their whole, be it political party IT channels or be it ideology based IT, cells, which are only invested, people are paid to promote such kind of news and to promote hatred. So that's a very real problem. You also mentioned about arrests because of social media posts. We've had similar, and you rightly said, the question of CAA or anti-CAA, the protests were going on, and since the lockdown happened, there have been 300 people arrested. Mostly anti-CAA protests happened peacefully across campuses, and then there was police violence, and the disturbance happened in Jamia, and then it just, like, people woke up, people started, residents of that area started getting up and saying that police brutality in campus is not okay, and then it just spread like a wildfire through India. um, it resulted, I'm telling all this for people just to give a background so that they get the context, and it resulted in riots in Delhi, pogrom, few people call it, the pro CAA protester, because already it's a law, so I don't know what they were protesting against. Uh, the people who didn't want people to protest against anti-CAA, they took down, they again damaged a religious structure, and that riot happened. So, funnily, after the COVID-19 lockdown has happened, 300 people in India, mostly students, mostly people belonging to one minority group, have been arrested for causing the riots. And if you see who are the victims of the riots or the pogrom, they are the same community people. So it's like, exactly, um, I am the one who is hurt. You come to my house and you arrest me. That is happening, and that is very troublesome. And yeah, literally it's troublesome and it's scary, and state violence is real. Um, Last week, two activists from a leading feminist group just got arrested from their homes, and now they're in Tihar jail till June 11th. So all the processes have just been broken, and this lockdown has resulted in um, more authoritarianism, and we don't know how. I mean, I don't know how this is going to pan out later. How is it there in Sri Lanka?
How is the?
How is it in Sri Lanka? Like post lockdown, with respect to media expression, is there any change? Like,
I post lockdown situation.
huh?
I I think I was looking at pre-lockdown and the lockdown actually in the
Oh
last
yeah,
report
sorry,
I
not
was
post lockdown.
finishing. So when I look at this, actually when it comes to lockdown, there were specific kind of challenges during the lockdown. But I mean, but the situation before the lockdown and during the lockdown has not much change. What has
Okay.
happened is during the lockdown, arrestamo, uh, the and the physical attacks are more. The incidents of that, violence, direct kind of things are more. But then when it comes to previous, the pre lockdown period, there are more institutional, legal, and other actions which are much more repressive. So there was what I felt was, even when it comes to uh, freedom of expression and the situation of the journalist, I saw the since November, I think I look into what is the situation from our last election in the mid November up to uh, February end. There were like 25 incidents where the journalists were sometimes attacked, uh, sometimes faced issues when they were obstructed when they do the duties, and then the same patterns have remained in the lockdown situation. Sometimes the business persons have threatened the journalist.
Mm.
Sometimes journalists were arrested under the fake news charges that what they put in the social media. Sometimes when they reported about the injustices about the government assistance program, they face issues from the politicians. So the context has been different in the lockdown and the pre-lockdown. There was no difference in the number of attacks, number of issues they faced. So what I see is it will happen in the post-lockdown situation also,
Mm.
that similar kind of uh, challenges will remain to the freedom of expression in the post lockdown situation. In Sri Lanka, for violating the curfew laws, more than 50,000 people were arrested.
Whoa.
Yeah, I didn't look into the very recent ones, but I think I checked like 10th of May or something. More than 50,000 people were arrested. Around 10,000 vehicles were seized. The problem is that there's a curfew, and people shouldn't violate it, and it's because of a health precaution. And then we have to think also about the rights of the people in detention. uh, One journalist who was arrested for publishing fake news in social media. It was not fake news. It is a news given to him by a medical doctor, which is about a suspected COVID-19 patient, uh, and then he had published it. And the government regulation is until they confirm that nobody could publish such information,
Mm.
and then he has published the as a verification, he has published the medical records, and that was used against him. And anyway, this person, when he went to the detention, in the regular prison there was no space. Then he was transferred into a different space, which actually meant for the juvenile suspects and juvenile offenders to stay. At this place, there was not much space in 10 by 10 feet space. I think he said there were around 8 persons. That meaning that one prisoner would have more than little bit more than the 1 square feet to stay. And at this COVID-19 situation, we have to think, how do we stop the spread of the COVID-19 inside the prisons? So this is not taken into consideration that when they are released, and after some 2-3 weeks when they are released and go home, even the charge is fake. They have to be away from their family members, or they are in the risk that whether they have COVID-19 or not, because of the health facilities, the sanitary facilities they have received, and also the space, social distancing, and other things they got during the detention. And another incident, two prisoners were shot dead after they protested because one prisoner has got. I mean, there was kind of that story that one prisoner has got the has been confirmed of COVID-19, and the other prisoners protested, asking to release or change their presence. So in the that protest was controlled by shooting two prisoners who dead and wounding six others. In another incident, another person who was a social media activist who was arrested. He had health conditions before his arrest, and the family was not allowed to meet him during the lockdown, uh, and his proper health care was not provided, and there was no way of verifying because even a phone call was not allowed with him. And there are other incidents where in Sri Lanka has this draconian prevention of terrorism law. It was used to arrest people during the lockdown under certain charges, and then the access to legal counsels uh, were refused. And also, I would say this as the last incident, another person who was convicted for killing eight civilians, uh, infamously called Mirsaville massacre, the only military person convicted in Sri Lanka for killing eight civilians, which included one 5-year toddler and three teenagers. Was given presidential pardon and released uh, uh, just just soon as the lockdown is started, because when the COVID-19 is there, uh, the focus is somewhere else. So the politician can use this moment to do whatever they wish, and even the West or the NGOs or the INGOs, their focus can be in a different point. So it is the time to play the cards. I'll stop from there. I don't know whether I answered your question.
No, I think it was just mutual sharing of situations. This last, both what we shared, it was like, okay, what is the condition and how is it going to be? These incidents answer the question because they show us what it has been, how the situation is being manipulated, and what are the possibilities of manipulation later also. Last,
I
I
think
will end this
I
conversation.
just can you give me one more? So
Huh.
the other incident is in the post lockdown situation. A cabinet minister died. His funeral was held, and then all the parliamentary people went there, and no social distancing, nothing. uh, and the son of this cabinet minister is going on a vehicle, like greeting people. It wasn't kind of a funeral, it was a kind of I think it looked like a festival, and it is happening. I mean, the things they preach to the average citizens, how to keep social distancing and other things, were not applicable to the when it comes to politicians. There are many others who were not able to go into their funerals of their loved ones. uh, I mean, who did a lot of contributions, perhaps thinking that they do something to prevent the COVID-19 situation. But those who have power behaving in this manner, in a irresponsible way, and also giving kind of, the image of bad practice to others is, I think, hugely problematic.
Yeah. Instead of modeling, you're modeling wrong things, like you rightly said. Now, Damit, this is the present situation. Um, what can people, lay people do? Like, okay, we have told about the problems. Um, I'm not asking what are the solutions because solution is so vast and so multi-layered that we cannot have this, you know, and give like one, two, three solutions. But um, what are the small steps we can take, or at least how can we start expanding our perceptions? How can we start questioning, what we just take as norm? Any few, last few lines you want to share before we end this call, because you've been working in the field for so long. Mine is a recent enrich. I'm noticing very recently, and I'm reacting. I can say I'm not even responding. But you have worked earlier and for longer time. What What would you suggest?
In terms of general COVID-19 situation, I
General
think
dissent and curbing of dissent situation. How can lay public hold people responsible?
it's a very difficult and complex question to give a solution, as you rightly pointed out. But I think still, uh, dissent means, still we if we still believe that somebody has right to dissent, that means that there are things I don't believe in. There are things I get angry after hearing it. How do I behave? This is very important. As general people, we should demand the freedom, and we should respect the freedom that other people have the freedom to say things I don't like, things which I get angry, things I cannot bear. Perhaps I should, but perhaps we shouldn't bear the injustice. We shouldn't bear the things which damage the society entirely. Damage also a political word, but things like, I would say, if somebody's life is in danger, so we should bring it to discussion and talk about how we should do this. And it is a difficult point when it comes to the what we should we choose, whether the freedom of expression or the prevention of COVID-19. This is the kind of argument put forward now. Let's save our lives first, and then think of the freedom of expression and all.
Yeah.
This cannot happen that way. If you only have freedom of expression, you will only have the prevention of COVID-19 uh, also going well. Because if you cannot question the things done by the government, if you are arrested for that, how how we as a nation going to prevent the COVID-19 situation? The government, if nobody is allowed to talk about anything, government won't do anything. So it must be the priority to defend and keep and defend the freedom of expression and space for dissent. It is for the benefit of everybody that we should understand that if we uh, I mean if we don't protect the space, that the medical doctor could come out and say, this is what happened, we are not provided PPE, our lives are in danger. If the or this is how the government is doing, this policy is wrong, this is not the way to do it, that right has to be mainly protected. And putting, I mean the especially the ignorance and the statements put blaming on minorities and others, and which actually takes away the responsibility from the governments, must be challenged. So I think the general people, what they first do is to be aware. To be aware uh, is to aware at any point. I mean, not to take that the things told by the mainstream media or social media, not to take it for granted. Uh, Question it. If you question it, if you doubt it, and then think of your knowledge also, your experiences also. If this is correct, if this is whether this is wrong, or is this person, I mean, if person is lying, what is the objective of lying? I think if we are aware, we can do certain things. If we keep the space for others to question, to say things we don't like, we would be safe. And that is one important thing. On the other hand, I would like to mention a totally different thing. uh, when the term social distancing came into discussion uh, very recently with the COVID-19. So some of the friends, especially the colleagues in the social work field, said this is incorrect use. It is not social distancing. It is physical distancing. So when it comes to these issues, also that you would don't politically distance yourself, don't socially distance yourself, don't stop defending your rights. So, and also don't stop looking about your loved ones. Maybe you are physically away, use the technology, and maybe you cannot go and protest on the street, but protest in the digital space. So we have to I mean, keep the fight going. Then only we would overcome this issue. Otherwise we would be manipulated and we never know.
Right. What I hear you say is, if I can summarize, one, to be aware by consuming news from different places, not being in an echo chamber. Second, to question whatever is put forth. Third, that it is not an ideological issue anymore. You might say something that I don't agree with, but I still have to defend your right to say that, the famous
Yeah.
quote. And make sure your condition, be it during arrest, during detention, the basic justice, basic how a person is treated, even if they dissent or not, that should be protected by everybody. Like, there might be a right wing person and I might not be having the right wing ideology, but in their detention, if they're facing inhuman condition, I should still be able to go up and say that, what are you doing? This is wrong. State has to give particular conditions for people in detention, people in prison, and so forth. And yeah, so I think these are very, very valuable points. Thank you so much for also adding the aspect of not politically distancing, not much, making the other as the carrier of virus, but that takes the responsibility of the government. Thank you so much, Damith. It was really a very fulfilling and fruitful conversation. We might have upset many people. Um, So, but I think this conversation was important. It was important to say things which are not palatable, and in this way, that this space let us, communicate these things. So, thank you for using the space. Thank you for vocalizing and always being, speaking truth to power. Thank you.
Thanks. Nice talking with you.
Yeah. Bye bye.